Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Najwa. I would love to have you do me a favor. If you're new here, please hit the like and subscribe button. And when you hit the like and subscribe button, that means every time I post video, you'll know, like when I post video, we also can find each other. That way we can have conversations, we can open up this conversation. Like-minded people can find one another. We can be brought together, okay? Otherwise, we don't know each other, we don't see each other, and I want to see you because I love you guys. So I would love to have you go ahead, click subscribe, click the like button. I have my little note here. I wrote down the note that I am so thankful for Joe Biden. And I also wrote down the emperor's clothes. So, Joe Biden and the emperor's clothes. Why am I talking about the emperor's clothes? So, here's the thing. The person who pretends to really care about racism and the violence that has taken over the United States of America, the person who really pretends to care but actually is majorly complicit in the struggle, who is actually majorly exacerbating and irritating the issues, but the person who pretends, for all intents and purposes, to actually care about the black lives, the Jewish lives, the LGBTQ lives, the female lives, the Asian lives, the Latino lives, the Native American lives, that keep being lost to racism. The person who pretends to actually care, but really they're making these situations worse, there is a special place in hell for these people. So I just have to say, I am so thankful for Joe Biden. I know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is, their administration is not perfect. But to look at the fact that they have created so many jobs, and they have brought unemployment down from the sort of boys club that Donald Trump had created, and this atmosphere of a boys club that only admits white men. Their investment into making sure that that's discrimination to that level is not reflected in policy, and their actual effort, intentional effort towards that, I really, really care about. I really appreciate. But beyond that, they actually are not afraid to talk about the fact that anti-black sentiment is weaved into the American story, and it should not be, and it's time to get rid of this anti-black sentiment. You guys know that recently in Jacksonville, actually, I think it was the same day as the March on Washington anniversary, a guy walked up into a Dollar General store in Jacksonville, Florida, the state where Ron DeSantis has banned many famous books written by African Americans, where his administration has wrote it in the curriculum that it is required to talk about the benefits of slavery, and where immigrants have been treated like subhuman, where he has enacted a don't say gay law, where he has attacked African American voting rights. He went to the press to say how racism has no place in Florida. And when you looked at that debate stage, and there are going to be more debates, and we're going to take a look at them as we will with the Democratic debates as well, but it just is so concerning to me. It's so concerning to me. I really don't know how to put it. As an African American woman, as a millennial, as, someone who has a deep, inherent, visceral connection, I'm probably going to cry, with every single African American, but really anyone who is at the hands of white supremacy, who lose their lives to racism and gun violence. But really, just from a deep, generationally trauma area, deep in me, every time I see a predominantly African American establishment shot up by a white supremacist, and see parents, children, young people who have their whole life ahead of them, innocent people, innocent black people lose their lives because of racism, it hurts. It hurts so deep. It hurts so deep. And I'm so happy that we have a president that's not afraid to condemn that. Truly, 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 in word and in action. You know? Someone who is not afraid to, in action, put into policy stuff that doesn't encourage white supremacy. And they're campaigning to put stuff that doesn't encourage white supremacy. In the common way that they speak to the everyday American people, stuff that does not encourage white supremacy, but in fact condemns it. So yeah, there are people who are putting facades on, pretending that what happened in Jacksonville and what happened to Emmett Till, what happened to the 4 little girls, what happened in Charlottesville, what happened at the Capitol, what happened at the synagogue, I think it was New Light. What has happened so many times? What happened in Texas? What has happened so many times? But for me, when it's wiping out more black people, especially black men, I mean, I've got a soft spot in my heart for black men, because when it comes to anti-black sentiment, you know, I don't think anyone could truly understand it unless they put themselves in black Americans' shoes and they thought about if every single day that they turned on the news, their sisters and their brothers and their cousins and their friends and people who they went to school with, and neighbors and people in their community, people in their churches, people who went to their university, people who worked at the McDonald's near their house, people who worked at the park, people who were trying to advocate for them of the same skin color in government. Every single day they saw those people dying at the hands of white supremacy. Well, I mean, you know, supremacy. If we're putting, you know, if a white person would put themselves in the shoes and they imagined that everyday white people were just dying because of hate crimes, maybe then we could get to the point where we can change some of this. And we had gotten to a point where we could change some of this, but when Donald Trump became president, a lot of the common sense, the common compassion just sort of left the room. And it's not only racism, it's also climate change. You know, I look at how we have to drive to places where we could walk in 5 minutes. I look at how so many people look at public transit and dismiss it as, I'm not going to ride that because those people ride it. I look at how people they would rather get in their gas guzzling pickup trucks than a bike and bike to work maybe just once a week, even if, you know, because that would help the environment. I look at people who refuse, not only refuse to recycle, but throw trash in the street. I look at people who have taken these talking points from these rich billionaires, these far-right rich billionaires and millionaires, who say that climate change is a hoax, and yet they are responsible for like half of the carbon emissions on this planet, them and their private planes and private jets and ships and boats. and gigantic mansions and their factories with their slaves, you know. Um, we are destroying this planet. We are destroying this planet, and for what? For what? You know, what does a human being need to exist? Shelter, food, water, family. But all of this stuff, all of this stuff, all of this stuff, we're looking at our world burn. We're looking at our neighbors, our black, our Jewish, our Hispanic, our Asian, our LGBTQ neighbors being slaughtered. So yeah, there's a special place in hell for people who pretend to care about anti-racism but who don't. I wanted to just give a quick note about the Emperor's New Clothes. I'm someone who grew up on fairy tales and Disney, something that the governor in Florida is trying to destroy. The great thing about fairy tales is that it teaches children the difference between right and wrong. It teaches children about scruples, about resilience and strength, about delayed gratification, because delayed gratification is always pretty much better. And I grew up on Disney, you know. I recently went to Euro Disney. This was my third time going to a Disney park. And this wave of misogyny and perhaps racism and xenophobia threatened to ruin my day. See the video. But it didn't. The magic was still there, but it got me to thinking about how fairy tales, how that nugget of magic really shows things to children and adults alike in a way that you might not have looked at it before. Donald Trump recently checked in. I mean, it starts with him. It starts with him. Where we're at right now starts with him. It starts a long time ago, but it restarted. There was a resurgence of climate change denial and of anti-black racism, anti-immigrant racism, sentiment that really got reawakened with him. And when he went to go in to check in for his mugshot at Fulton Top County, by the way, he is totally screwed. I told my husband he is totally screwed because he has got 3 black women judges and prosecutors after his booty. He's screwed. But when he went to check in for the Fulton County mugshot, he put the wrong weight down on his documents. He said that he was 215. And a lot of people are talking about that, talking about how that was what Muhammad Ali was at his prime. And not only that, he's going around calling these female black prosecutors reverse racists. He should, you know the nonsense that he spews. You know the nonsense that he spews. And not only does he spew it, he brings in global allies as well as contentious relationships with other countries that really need a level of diplomacy and kind of like shut the F upness, you know, those countries like Russia and China. You know, you don't go lone wolf talking about them or talking with them, and he just spews a whole bunch of craziness on his social media channels. And people just oddly agree with him. You know, at the debate, 6 out of 8 of the candidates said that they would pardon him if they became president. And the audience cheered. The audience cheered. And still, Donald Trump is the front runner of the Republican nominees, even though he might have to be running his presidency from prison, baby. People are still willing to not have money for gas, not have money for their prescriptions, not have money for health insurance, not have money to pay their bills, to be pit up against their neighbors, people many of them have lived alongside for years and years and years and decades. Basically, to destroy themselves, destroy this country, pull us into a war, and become the laughing stock of G7 and G20. People are willing to do that for Donald Trump. The Emperor's New Clothes. Now, I don't know if many of you remember what the theme of the Emperor's New Clothes was, but, today we have psychologists and sociologists and things like that, so we can kind of put more of a label of this phenomenon on it. And the way the story goes is that the Emperor really wanted some new clothes. So he goes to these tailors, and actually, lo and behold, the tailors didn't really create anything for them. I can't remember if they didn't have time, or if they wanted to actually just play kind of a crappy joke on him, or if they were just, in this day and age with narcissistic, very powerful leaders, a lot of times many people are flying monkeys and they're living in fear, they are living in deep fear. So they basically kind of always try to please the narcissistic, tyrannical leader. And so I don't know which of those options it was, but for whatever reason, these tailors did not prepare a suit for the Emperor. And he's naked. And they know, okay, so the Emperor's naked. The Emperor's naked. But, if we tell him that he's naked and we tell him that we didn't prepare anything for him, dude, we might get thrown in a chokey. We might be on the guillotine. And, many of the fairy tales, they come from medieval times. And, America comes from colonialism. So, but here it is, the Emperor's naked, and the tailors decide, let's just convince him that he has on the best freaking outfit on the planet. And they do. They're like, oh my God, Emperor, your clothes are so beautiful. And the Emperor's like, yeah, I'm not sure about it. But, he's so self-absorbed and conceited and insecure and corrupt, that he has gone along with this whole charade. And everyone else has gone along with it as well. He's walking around town. People are telling him, oh, Emperor, you look wonderful in your new clothes. Only one person in the village tells the Emperor, dude, you're naked. And it's a little kid. And there is a commonality between little kids, sometimes artists or very visionary type people, progressive people, the young progressive people, comedians. There are certain subculture of people who aren't afraid to tell you what it is. And in medieval times, it was the court jester. I'm reminded of the show The Tudors after Henry VIII, which I love Tudor history. And that is one of the best shows ever. If you really, really want to look at how a tyrant is born, take a look at that show. One of the best shows of our century. But anyway, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers plays Henry VIII. And he has beheaded one wife at this point. 2 wives have died. He doesn't have a male heir. Well, actually, no. He does have a male heir, but it was at the risk of losing his wife. And he's enacted all of these useless wars, spent what I would imagine the equivalent of millions of British pounds of money, of his taxpayers' money on useless wars at this point. He's become a tyrant. He's fat. He's overweight. He's fat. He's got this nasty, pussy, smelly wound on his leg. He acts like he's the smartest person in the room. He will behead anyone in a hot second if they don't suck up to him. And he's lost one of his most trusted advisors, Thomas More, at this point, I believe. And Thomas More was also not afraid to speak out against the Emperor, but Thomas More wasn't a child or a jester. Thomas More was an academician, a theologian, um, a learned man, a man of faith. And Henry VIII has him beheaded as well. And the only person who can basically tell Henry VIII at this part in the show that he's being a big, big idiot is the court jester. But everybody else just convinces him that he's amazing. Just like the emperor from The Emperor's New Clothes. In today's terms in sociology and stuff, we would call that groupthink. And you've probably heard that about the cult of Trump. It's like there have been studies that have shown that, if you put a group of people in the room and most of them, you have a variant group, a variable group, and most of the people in the room are totally unaware of what the experiment is. And then you put like maybe a few plants in there and you show something on a whiteboard and you ask them an answer. For example, they showed people in this one experiment some lines, and they asked them which line is the longest line. You can clearly see which line is the longest line, but if the plants in the room say, oh no, nah, this is playing a trick on me, because it's an optical illusion. You can so clearly see that line 2 is the longest line. But everybody in the room basically knows that line 4 is the longest line. I'm speaking hypothetically. This isn't exactly, but I'm explaining exact kind of how this went. Everybody in the room starts to say, oh yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. 2 is the longest line. And everybody says 2 is the longest line, knowing darn well 4 is the longest line. That's what groupthink is. That is the sucky up nature of nasty human weirdness that's encoded in us, that age and maturity and education and empathy has to kind of make us go against. We kind of sometimes have to go against our peers, because sometimes what our peers are doing is wrong, and it takes bravery to do that. Joe Biden has the bravery to go against his peers. Kamala Harris has the bravery to go against her peers and say, we need to put gun reform laws in this country. We need to stop with the anti-black rhetoric, the anti-black policies. We need to take climate change seriously. So I'm very thankful for Joe Biden. I really, really am. I also found out that he and George Bush were the last 2 Republican candidates. Candidates. I won't say presidents, because Joe Biden has just become president, but at the time he would have been just a politician. But the last 2 who eventually would become presidents that were for a ban on assault rifles. Why do we need assault rifles? Why do we need things that literally are needed to be at the forefront of lines of deep, deep war in the hands of everyday people? Especially some everyday people who suffer from mental illness and who can walk in and shoot up innocent black people, shoot up innocent kids. But, McCain wasn't with the ban, and Donald Trump obviously wasn't with the ban, but George Bush and Joe Biden, they were. Yeah. I hope this gets better, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.